to read animal minds, and at times humans too. She'd always said that humans were harder because there was too much clutter in their heads. Animals were clear and true. She'd always loved to hang out with animals more than people, her cousins excluded, so it was natural she'd open a pet store. Rain had always had an extraordinary green thumb. Plants just seemed to flourish whenever she walked into a room, so of course she'd gone into horticulture. And Ember, she'd been making delicious desserts since she'd learned to walk, so her chocolate shop was a natural extension. Gray's future, though, hadn't been so cut and dried. In high school, he'd looked much the same as he did today. Tall, dark, well-muscled, except for the shamrock tattoo on his right biceps for good luck. Flirting and dating had never been a problem for him, and he'd actually done his first haircut as a dare. One of his girlfriends had a minor hair emergency one weekend before her sister's wedding, and her usual stylist hadn't been available. Gray had always cut his own hair and done a decent job of it, so he offered to help. The girlfriend reluctantly agreed, and a legend had been born. After graduation, he'd flown to Europe for a few months to train with an excellent stylist in Paris, who also happened to be a wizard. He returned home to Silver Hollow with a whole new bag of tricks and his golden scissors in hand. These days, he cut hair because he loved to do it. It was art, and he enjoyed transforming women and making their dreams come true. He loved what he did and loved working with his clients. As he snipped and measured, his mind wandered back to all the tasks he still needed to get on top of to make sure the day ran smoothly. Looked like he'd have to hustle after he finished with Mrs. Newcastle to get it all done. He sighed. At least he didn't have to worry about carrying on a conversation this early in the morning, not with the way she chattered on about her granddaughter. Thank the goddess, given he'd not had time for coffee either. As his client prattled on about the wedding and her other family that would be at the wedding, Gray's mind wandered. He'd lost his parents young. So had all the Quinn cousins. Perhaps that was why they were so close now. He loved each of his cousins dearly, Issy, Rain, and Ember. But lately, the idea of starting a family of his own had become more and more appealing. Too bad he'd not found anyone he wanted to settle down with, or at least anyone acceptable. Not that he didn't date or have plenty of options. A recent issue of the Town Crier had named him the most eligible bachelor in Silver Hollow. His cousins teased him mercilessly over that. Gray didn't mind, but he couldn't help but wonder if someday he'd be going to the wedding of his own granddaughter. Not likely, considering the way things were going. The only girl in town who'd even come close to capturing his heart was the one person who was strictly off-limits. She belonged to the South Side Witch Coven, and it had been feuding with the Quinns for as long as anybody could remember. Honestly, Gray couldn't even remember what had started the row. Probably some long-ago argument or snide remark, but the ill will persisted. It had gotten to the point that the two halves of town didn't even visit the other anymore, except under extraordinary circumstances. The farthest Gray had been into dreaded Southie territory had been with Issy during one of her investigations into a magical murder. They'd gone to Charmed, a small jewelry store that catered to the growing tourist crowd. It was owned by the niece of one of the South Side's most notorious wizards, Bobby Knight. Strangely, Gray didn't remember much about his visit to the store. He remembered walking in, looking around, and seeing the shop's owner behind the counter. Then, nothing. Weird, that. From his perch, Cosmo paced and squawked while staring at Gray's handiwork as if he approved. The cawing helped bring Gray back to the present moment, and he made a mental note to give his avian friend an extra slice of orange later. Concentration was key to giving his clients the best possible results. Mrs. Newcastle continued to chatter about how fabulous she was going to look for the wedding, and how Gray always gave her the perfect cut. He'd partially finished one side of her cut, but he needed his special golden trimming shears to do the rest. He gave her a bland smile while reaching into a drawer for them. What most of his clients didn't know was that those particular golden scissors were specially infused with magic, even more so than his other tools. Magic that helped him create the most flattering style for each hair type and face shape, depending on the client.